Welcome to Husky Howls from New Covenant Academy.
Have you ever found yourself sitting in a classroom or maybe like a training seminar or something, and you just look over at that one person who seems to effortlessly just get it?
Oh, yeah, totally. The one who's barely even trying.
Right. Like, you know the type. They aren't frantically taking notes. They're not sweating the material. But then, I mean, when the questions start flying, they just naturally have all the answers.
It's infuriating.
It is. And you sit there wondering, like, what is their secret? Why do some students just succeed so fluidly while others constantly struggle just to keep their heads above water?
Well, it's a profound question, honestly.
Yeah, and today we're not looking at, flashcards or weird little life hacks. The mission of this deep dive is to unpack the core framework that builds a truly successful student.
Yeah, because we are moving way beyond that archaic advice of just, telling kids to study harder.
Right. And we're pulling from a really fascinating stack of educational presentations, articles, and notes today. And I need to say right up front, these elements are identified by Dr. Song of New Covenant Academy as the most relevant to student learning. And his 30-plus years of experience in working with K-12 students lends strong credibility to his observations.
30 years that's a massive sample size to draw from.
Exactly. So to give you a roadmap of where we're heading today, Dr. Song breaks this whole thing down into 5 distinct pieces.
Yeah, and he categorizes them in a really interesting way. The first 2 are what he considers God-given foundational elements, and then the remaining 3 are developed elements.
Which is a cool distinction, right? Because it acknowledges that, yes, there's a raw baseline that every student starts with.
Right, but it heavily emphasizes that the vast majority of what actually makes a student highly effective is built and nurtured over time.
You aren't just born a perfect student.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can even begin to talk about, like, study habits or motivation, we really have to look at the raw physical and mental machinery a student is working with.
The hardware, basically.
Yes, hardware. The sources use this great analogy. If you think of human intelligence like the CPU of a computer, this entire framework just totally clicks.
It really does.
Yeah.
Because you don't necessarily need the absolute fastest, top-of-the-line processor to be a high-achieving student.
Right.
But you do need a solid CPU to handle the heavy lifting, the information processing and pattern recognition.
And that CPU, what Dr. Song categorizes as basic intelligence, is actually, it's highly misunderstood, isn't it?
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
People often conflate intellectual capacity entirely with just raw IQ scores.
Or like standardized test numbers.
Right. But this baseline intelligence actually encompasses age-appropriate mental development, an innate curiosity about the world, and just the sheer tenacity to overcome challenges.
So it's not just about being a math genius.
No, not at all. Unless you're talking about a literal borderline genius, the differences in raw IQ among students are actually quite minor when you look at long-term K-12 performance.
Wait, really?
Minor. Yeah. What really sets the effective student apart is that baseline mental capability combined with grit.
Yeah.
It's the ability of that CPU to just sustain a heavy workload without immediately quitting.
But a great CPU is completely useless if the computer's power supply is, like, totally erratic. Or if the cooling fan is broken and the whole system is just constantly overheating.
Which brings us to the other foundational element, physical fitness.
Right. And when people hear physical fitness, they immediately picture a student, running a fast mile in gym class.
Dodgeball.
Exactly, dodgeball. But the notes here detail a much more physiological reality. We are talking about weight, diet, physical growth, strength, stamina, posture, and rest.
Yeah, we are talking about the biological mechanisms that literally allow the brain to function. You simply cannot maintain the intense, sustained executive focus required for learning if your physical foundation is fundamentally compromised.
I mean, think about diet and rest.
Oh, it's huge. If a student starts their morning with a massive intake of processed sugar and, say, only 4 hours of sleep.
They might have a brief spike in energy.
Yeah, exactly. But physiologically, by 10:00 a.m., their blood glucose levels are just crashing.
And that crash induces brain fog.
It completely wipes out their executive functioning right as they're, sitting down for a complex math lesson.
So let's apply this to a real scenario to make it concrete. Imagine a young elementary school student, a 4th grader. Let's call him Mason.
Okay, Mason.
For Mason, this hardware phase isn't about complex algorithms. It looks like Mason getting a full, healthy night of sleep, so he physically has the stamina just to sit upright.
Yeah, and even posture plays a huge role here.
Oh, right. The posture thing in the notes was fascinating.
Yeah, because slouching physically compresses the diaphragm, which reduces the depth of breathing, which, and this sounds crazy, but it's true, literally limits the oxygen flowing to his brain.
Wow. So when Mason's physical hardware is stable, when he's slept, eaten well, and has the stamina to sit up straight, his age-appropriate mental hardware can actually boot up.
Exactly. He has the cognitive clarity and the natural curiosity to, I don't know, look out the classroom window during a science lesson and wonder why those specific clouds are forming.
Oh, and then he has the tenacity needed to match those cloud shapes to the diagrams in his textbook without giving up.
Right. So Mason has a highly functional CPU and a stable, healthy power supply.
But having a pristine computer sitting on a desk is totally useless if there's absolutely no reason to turn the machine on.
That's the kicker.
The electricity, the spark that actually hits the power button, is the third element in our framework, motivation.
What's fascinating here is that motivation isn't strictly an internal force, nor is it strictly an external one.
Right, people tend to compartmentalize it.
Yeah. They assume a kid is either naturally driven from birth or they need to be constantly pushed and prodded by adults.
Like a carrot and stick.
Exactly. But external inputs, like the expectations of parents, teachers, or specific life experiences, and internal inputs, like a personal passion for a hobby, they actually interact. They supplement each other.
They weave together.
Yeah, to form a student's overall drive.
I find that interaction tricky, though. I mean, I think a lot of parents and educators listening would argue that some kids are just completely unplugged from the wall.
A totally apathetic student.
Right. Like, what do you actually do with a teenager who just stares blankly at the whiteboard and seems to possess absolutely zero academic motivation? It feels like you can't force electricity into a system that refuses to turn on.
I get that. But the framework actively challenges the idea of the unmotivated student. It argues that everyone is motivated by something.
Something.
Right. The adult's job isn't to somehow generate motivation out of thin air. It's to locate the existing power source and reroute it.
Reroute it. Okay, how?
Well, there is a very specific, detailed anecdote in the notes from 2003 that illustrates the mechanics of doing this.
Oh, the basketball story.
Yes, there was this high school student who wanted to do absolutely nothing but play basketball. He had zero interest in academics. But his mother, conversely, desperately wanted him to go to college.
A classic clash. The kid's internal motivation is entirely focused on the court, and the external motivation from the parent is pulling in the total opposite direction toward the classroom.
Exactly. Now, the ineffective approach would be for the adults to try and crush the basketball dream.
Right, to force the academic one.
To try and unplug his power source, essentially. But the effective tactic, which the educator in this source utilized, was to tap into that existing basketball current.
They didn't just tell him to study.
No. They sat down and actually mapped out his future in basketball. They looked at the incredibly slim statistics of going pro, and then they introduced him to the massive world of sports management.
Oh, that's smart.
Athletic training, sports analytics, careers that would keep him deeply involved in the game he loved, but which explicitly required a college degree.
So they tied his time on the court to his academic eligibility. They fundamentally linked his deep love for the game to his math and reading scores.
Exactly. They didn't fight his internal electricity, they just built a wire connecting it to the academic engine.
He realized he needed the math to get to the basketball. And the notes say that student went on to graduate college in 4 years and now earns a 6-figure salary.
That is the power of rerouting, and you see the exact same mechanism at play with younger students, too.
Like middle schoolers.
Yeah, take an 8th grader, let's call her Josephine. Josephine might lack any shred of motivation to memorize abstract geometry formulas.
Because to her, it's just meaningless numbers on a page.
Right. But if her teachers or parents take the time to learn that she has a massive internal motivation for art, or maybe for building complex physical models, they can change their approach.
They bridge the gap. They show her how geometry is, like the foundational language of perspective in painting.
Yes. Or the structural math required to build those models safely.
Suddenly, geometry isn't a chore. It's the specific software she needs to create the art she actually cares about.
That cognitive pivot is where a student moves from being forced to learn to genuinely wanting to learn.
But of course, a powerful computer that is fully powered on is actually quite dangerous without an operating system directing its tasks.
Oh, absolutely.
You just end up with a machine running 500 game tabs at once until the whole thing crashes. Which brings us to the fourth element, Time management and prioritization.
The steering wheel?
Yes. The student has the hardware, they have the electricity, but they need an operating system to manage the applications. They need strict rules for processing information.
And we have to be incredibly clear about the mechanics of this section. When Dr. Song's framework discusses time management, it explicitly avoids modern life hacks.
Right, no gimmicks here.
We are not discussing, Pomodoro timers, specialized calendar apps, or speed reading techniques.
It's way deeper than that.
It is entirely fundamentally about setting correct life priorities and strictly keeping your commitments.
The notes outline a very specific, uncompromising priority hierarchy. Do you remember the list?
Yeah. First comes God, then family, and then education or work.
Those are the non-negotiable core processes.
Right. Everything else, hanging out with friends, playing sports, participating in hobbies, or working a minimum wage weekend job for extra spending money, those are negotiable background applications. They always come second.
And we need to look at the psychological mechanism behind why this specific hierarchy actually works. Because people might ask, why prioritize faith and family above the actual education in an academic framework?
It's a fair question, and it's because doing so provides an unshakable existential foundation.
Right.
When a student's ultimate sense of worth is tied to a higher spiritual purpose and just the unconditional love of their family, failing a math test doesn't destroy their core identity.
Which is huge for teenagers.
It significantly lowers their daily cognitive anxiety, which, ironically, frees up mental bandwidth and makes them better at math.
Whereas poor-performing students often flip this list completely upside down.
Oh, all the time.
They were the negotiable items at the very top. If a student's ultimate priority is their social status or the spending money from their weekend job, their entire operating system is incredibly fragile.
Extremely. A fight with a friend or a bad shift at work consumes all their mental processing power.
And the core responsibilities like studying just crash.
But knowing the priority list isn't enough, right? The student has to act as a ruthless task manager.
Yes. The framework insists on the absolute necessity of setting up a daily schedule, actively monitoring how time is used for allotted tasks, and just having the sheer discipline to follow through.
It is the immense power of the word no.
Yeah. It's looking at an application that is undeniably fun and undeniably interesting, like an immersive computer game or going to the mall with friends and having the maturity to close the tab.
To say, no, this is a negotiable item and it is currently interfering with my primary commitments.
Let's look at a high school junior. We'll call her Kim.
Okay.
The academic stakes are getting much higher for Kim. Proper prioritization means honoring her core commitment to study for her AP history exam.
And it means actively monitoring her time so she isn't just staring at a textbook while her brain is actually processing a social media feed on her phone.
Exactly. And crucially, it means having the discipline to say no when her boss asks her to take an extra shift at work, or when her friends want to spend the evening gaming online.
She has to run the operating system. If she lets her social life manage her schedule, her academic goals are sidelined.
But even a perfectly optimized computer running the best software with plenty of power will eventually encounter an error it cannot fix internally.
Right, life happens.
It will need to connect to an external network. It's going to need the IT department. And that is the final developed element, relational and social skills.
This is a critical piece that frequently gets overlooked in favor of pure, isolated academics.
We just tell kids to put their heads down and study.
Exactly. But as students grow, particularly as they enter their teenage years, they need to develop a highly functional screening system to determine who in their environment can actually help them achieve their goals and who might, introduce malware into their system.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the sources highlight a massive, almost universal irony in teenage development.
Oh, the misperception of the IT department.
Yes. Due to physiological brain changes and just general immaturity, teenagers frequently misperceive their own support network. They look at their parents, their older siblings, their teachers, church leaders, and they don't see a support network.
They see viruses.
Right. They see annoying taskmasters who are actively trying to shut down their fun.
It's so true.
So if teens view adults as the enemy, how do you bridge that gap? It feels like you'd almost have to trick a teenager into seeing the value of their parents, or at least appeal entirely to their own selfish self-interest.
Well, it isn't about tricking them. It's about teaching them the fundamental currency of human interaction.
Which is?
The sources point to a very ancient foundational concept to fix this. the golden rule.
The principle of reciprocity.
Exactly. If a student wants to be treated nicely, if they want to be given the benefit of the doubt when they inevitably make a mistake, they must treat others nicely first.
By giving respect where and when it's due, students actively build a positive web of relations.
They are essentially building relational capital. They are investing in the network.
Exactly that. That positive web of relations is what opens doors later on.
Yeah, it creates opportunities that a student could never access on their own, like a teacher willing to write a glowing recommendation letter.
Or a parent willing to fund a specialized summer camp because the kid has shown respect and maturity.
Right, and when that inevitable system crash happens, when they fail a massive test or face a deeply personal crisis, that web of relations is the safety net that catches them and helps them reboot.
Whereas a selfish, self-centered approach, where a student places their own immediate desires above everyone else's, the notes describe that as a literal formula for disaster.
You cannot function as an isolated machine in the real world.
So we have all the structural components laid out. We have the hardware, which is physical fitness and basic intelligence. We have the electricity motivation.
The operating system prioritization and discipline.
And we have the external network relational and social skills. We've looked at these 5 pieces individually, but how do they actually integrate to create a highly effective human being?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. Like if I am a parent or a teacher listening to this right now, how do I actually assemble this?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the magic happens when these elements coalesce.
When they come together.
Yeah, when they all interact and balance each other out, that is when truly measurable compounding growth takes place.
You don't just get a kid who memorizes facts for straight A's.
No, you get a resilient, well-rounded human being. But the critical instruction for adults here is patience.
Right. The sources emphasize that the role of parents and teachers isn't to force all these pieces together with a hammer.
You can't just mandate that a kid suddenly has a perfect OS and a flawless relational network by Monday morning.
Be perfectly balanced by tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't work.
The adult's role is to work patiently on small aspects of these 5 elements day by day.
They have to give the student time and space.
It is very much like a jigsaw puzzle. You can't force the pieces to fit before the student is developmentally ready to see the whole picture.
You gently guide them.
Exactly. You correct their physical posture on the desk. You help them locate and reroute their internal motivation. You teach them the discipline to say no to negotiable distractions. And you model strong relational reciprocity.
And over months and years, the pieces interlock.
Yeah.
And the ultimate goal of all of this patient puzzle building is staggering. The framework states the goal is not just high test scores or college admissions. The goal is to create a lifelong learner.
Someone equipped with endless curiosity.
And an insatiable desire to be a better person each day. I mean, that is a much higher, much more profound bar than simply passing AP history.
It is the fundamental difference between training someone to pass a temporary test and equipping someone with the structural capacity to navigate a complex life.
According to Dr. Song, many people wonder how NCEA produces such high-performing students. And according to him, there is no secret sauce or magical formula. It's about building these 5 elements in NCEA students over time so that they can be self-motivated and curious learners who know how to seek help, how to manage time and priorities, and also learn to balance physical well-being with mental well-being.
It is a lifelong practice, operating under the guise of a school curriculum.
So what does this all mean for you? We spent this entire deep dive examining K-12 students. We've talked about Mason's sleep, Josephine's art, and Kim's discipline. But aren't these 5 elements just as critical for adults navigating modern careers, complex relationships, and personal goals?
Oh, 100%.
Have you been keeping your own CPU healthy by managing your diet and respecting your need for sleep? Are you actively rerouting your internal motivation to power through your daily grind?
That's a tough one.
It really is. Have you been ruthlessly managing your priorities and saying no to the negotiable distractions on your phone? And most importantly, are you fostering your own relational network today?
The golden rule never expires.
Right. The blueprint for a highly effective student might just be the exact architectural plans you need to upgrade the next phase of your own life. Something to think about.